All right, the guest is ready. I am ready, and this is another episode of Audio Signal Podcast on ITSP Magazine with me, Marco Ciappelli, which also happened to be the co-founder of ITSP Magazine. And I have a couple of shows. This is the one that I do for fun, let's say, because it's about storytelling, storytellers, and the meaning of telling stories as human in our life. I like to say, and to start the show, I always say that we're all made of stories. And I'm pretty sure that my guest down Ireland is going to agree with me. And if she doesn't, well, she'll let me know. But anyway, that's what we're going to talk about today. My other show, just for a little bit of advertisement, is called Redefining Society, where I talk about technology and society. And sometimes they intersect one with the other. But enough about what I do. Let's talk about what Don does. And welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Marco. I appreciate the invitation. And hello out there to everybody. I'll give you the breakdown of me. So my writing started in a very odd way, so to speak, because I started as a technical writer. And the funny thing about that was we're going back. I'm going to really show my age here. So we're going back to the 70s, okay? And at the time, I was an executive secretary, but I worked in the documentation department of this oil and gas company. And the managing editor plopped some stuff down on my desk one day and said, "Hey, take a look at this stuff and see what you think," you know. And so I did. You know, that's when I invested in red pens and discovered, a whole new talent that I had that paid significantly more than, a little secretarial job. And so I transitioned from that company over to Compact Computer, where I worked for about 10 years. And from that point on, I learned about the entire publishing industry because I worked in corporate communications. And, while we were writing manuals and things for the product line, there was also the whole publishing part of that. We didn't just write them. We, edited them. We had a printing company that we dealt with. So we went on, we had to go to the printing company to check, what they were doing with that. So, I mean, it opened up a whole new world for me. And I'm very grateful to that technical writing. And something that I learned, which is very valuable for writers, is that when you are on a project, whatever, the project is, whether it's a manual or a user guide or whatever, you have a deadline. And you have to start with the date that it's due and work back to the day that you start it. And there's no tripping time in there. You've got to make your publishing deadline because whatever the thing is, if it's going to go into a box to be shipped out, there's no slip time. So it's very.
Let me ask you something, which is, of course, I'm curious about the transition between the technical writing, which is, if you're a geek, is a lot of fun. Yeah. I mean, I talk about cybersecurity, I talk about technology, and I love it. So it doesn't matter to me. But then I need the other outlet, which is, as I started as a copywriter in the advertising world, I know what it means to working within frames, and I love to be creative within frames. If I have a white paper, I kind of freak out. But if I have a briefing, then I can get creative within those limits. So I'd like to pick your brain in this, how you transition. If you already had a book in your mind before, and then you put it in a corner while you were a technical writer, or you just discover something and say, hey, maybe I can write something different. How did it go?
Well, it happened 2 years before I started at Compact Computer. I think it was somewhere around, actually, no, it was a little bit longer. I think it was somewhere around 78, 79. I had a very long commute to work. And so I was daydreaming, driving and daydreaming. And each day, the daydream grew to the point where I finally brought a yellow line tablet and a pen, and I had that on the passenger seat. So anytime I stopped, I would, scribble down notes. And that went on throughout that whole, I don't know, it was, like probably several months. And I mean, I had several line tablets filled up, and sat down one day and started typing it out. And I thought, wow, this is pretty good, and it was my very first science fiction novel. Back then it was called Second Chance, but it transitioned into Prophecy of Thal, which this is what it used to look like. Okay. And we just created a brand new cover, which I absolutely love. Very cool. Yeah, really nice. So it's really funny about that because, okay, so I started it somewhere around 1979 and I finished the first draft in 1984. Now, what you have to take into consideration is I did not know one thing at all about writing, nothing whatsoever. So it was not published until 33 years later. I went through draft after draft after draft, change this, change that. Luckily, I was in a critique group that helped me out because I had no inkling at all about writing. What helped when I started the technical writing job was I learned some of the process. Even though it was for technical documents, it still transitions into the creative area. You have to learn how to set up your book. You have to learn how to, create things on the page. And for God's sakes, I was horrible for years with commas and apostrophes. They were the enemy. This is why you always need a good editor to get you through these things. And
now, let me ask you. So 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
Was it really that different when you finally decide to publish it? Or was it something else that held you from, I don't know, maybe you wanted to be very perfect? Because, things are never really perfect when you write. I mean, you can go there the day after and you will change something that would have worked just fine.
No, I'll be honest with you, Marco. The first draft was so awful. It was just so awful. My main character cried, I think, about 85% through the book. I mean, when you don't know what you're doing, when you don't know what you're doing, you do the best that you can. But then, as you look at it again, and then again and again, then you learn how to really create a story that, anybody would be interested in.
Right.
And I mean, it's sad, but we all stumble through our first book.
Oh, wasn't Hemingway that said the first draft of everything is shit? That's what he said. So if Hemingway said that,
I'm sure. I definitely say that. It's like
But there is a good idea usually. There is a good idea. You just need to carve it out of the stone, and the sculpture is already in it. So, but then after that, you ended up, I was reading your bio, having written and published 17 novels, 7 nonfiction books, and 15 screenplays. So I guess you figured it out.
Oh, yeah, I figured it out. The critique group that I joined back, I think it was around 1984, 1985, they were so helpful to, turn my ideas into something that was worthy of, spending time getting them down on paper. You've got to have either a good editor, a good critique group, or a good proofreader, or someone to get your work to the point where somebody else can look at it and say, oh boy, because even today, I read 2 to 6 books a week, and it's awful when I read something that has on the cover New York Times bestselling author or USA Today bestselling author, and there's errors all over the place. Sometimes it's like they don't even have their character's name spelled the same way throughout the book, or that they've lost a dog or, something else that's in there. It just irks me.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you are in that business, it's kind of like when you get into the metrics, then you see the metrics. Mm-hmm. And when you and I can tell you this because my wife, she's a customer on set of movies. So every time we watch a movie or anything that has, the mic sticking out a little bit, or there is continuity where, somebody's supposed to have the tie in a certain way, but isn't enough. And she just see it. Like me as just a regular, now I see it too, because I'm like kind of trained like that. But yeah, I see what you say by saying, I notice, you notice all these things that maybe the regular reader wouldn't, but it does make a difference. It does make a difference.
The readers really, they're so ignorant about what should be on the page and what they're actually reading on the page, but what are you going to do?
Yeah, well, if they enjoy it. Tell me a little bit more about all this book that you write. Do you have a genre, a style that you follow? Is it all sci-fi? Do you go from one?
No, I have cozy mysteries. This is one.
And for the people listening to the podcast, Don is showing me the covers of the book.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they can't see it.
This is both. Some people like to watch podcasts. Some people just like me,
listen,
like a radio guy.
Yeah,
I like to listen, which I do also for books lately because I can consume many more. But so you have different genre that you get inspired.
Yeah, so I have the science fiction. Then I have some dystopian, which is that's the last dog, which is set in 2086. And then I have my Bonded series, which is a billionaire shapeshifter series. And always in the front of each book in that series, I have, you must be 18 years old to read this because shapeshifters include sex and violence. So I don't want to get in any trouble. I don't want my young adult people, tripping over there and getting into trouble with their parents. And then I have, the cozy mysteries. I've got 2 series in the cozy mysteries. And it's the same with the screenplays, except for with the screenplays, I also have horror. And every single one of my genres have won awards. And the thing about that, which I think is so critical to point out to other writers out there, professionals will tell you should stick to one genre. If you go into another genre, you're going to just, lose yourself and your readers and everything else. Well, that's not true. That's not true. I can write just about anything.
I'm laughing because the episode that I recorded before this was actually a cybersecurity thing. But the one before is actually with a neurosurgeon that became a writer. Mm-hmm. And when I asked him what is it was going to write the next, he told me exactly the same thing. He said, my publisher suggests me to stick with what I know, with my style, because the reader would expect that. And instead, he's writing something completely different. And this is on the same day, 2 writers that are saying the same thing. And you know what I told them? I said, you write what you want.
Yeah. Yeah. What makes you happy? Because if it doesn't make you
Exactly.
happy, it's not going to be any good.
Exactly. Exactly. Tell me, I'm curious, as somebody that both wrote fiction books and screenplay. I mean, this is an entire different technique
Oh, yeah.
when you write one or the other. Maybe our audience will be interested in, I think, in knowing how you approach one versus the other.
Well, with a novel, you can, you have the ability to put in all types of descriptions, and that's what the reader wants. The reader wants, to see the environment that the character's in, what the situation is. They want everything spelled out for them. Whereas in a screenplay, you have no more than 120 pages. And actually, producers want, they would be very happy to stick between 90 and 95 pages. So, and this goes through also with adapting a book. If you're adapting a fiction book that's 400 pages and you have to shrink that down, which I've done several times to, 95 pages. I mean, it's like a lot of things get left out. And, when movies get made from books, you've got the book audience people who are infuriated that
Usually, yeah.
all these things have been left out. Well, why didn't they put this in here? It was so important. Well, you know what? You've got less than 2 hours to get it through there, unless of course you've got one of those big giant blockbusters that's a 3-hour movie. That's what I would love. Yay, team! That would be exciting. But it's very difficult to write that concise. You have very little wiggle room to introduce your character. You cannot say, Jill is 34 years old and she has this long flowing blonde hair and she dresses blah 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 blah. No, they want to know Jill is 31 years old. If she has any disabilities that are visible, you better line them up right there in the beginning, because we don't want to know 40 pages into it that, she lost an arm. It's like,
right, you'll see it.
Yeah. And I read that in screenplays all the time where, people that, they just, they get lost. They really don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you have less room and you need to be more specific for the visual that you're going to create. Do you prefer one or the other, or is it a genre that you enjoy?
No, I really love both forms, and I mean, I started writing screenplays in the late 80s because my the agent that I had, the literary agent that I had at that time, wanted me to adapt Prophecy of Thal into a screenplay. And, here we go again. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. And, you go to the library at that time and you pull out all kinds of books to try to figure out how to do this. And then you find a screenplay that you can read, and see how they did that. And the problem with that is if it's a shooting script, that's not what, beginners use. We are, nobody is paying you for the project when you're just starting off. Mm-hmm. And so you don't put in, sounds, and you don't put in, all this other stuff, so it's a really interesting learning process. But, I love both forms of the writing.
It's I guess it's a different mindset. And I think it goes together with maybe what I said at the beginning. Like, I like to have like a briefing and say, even if I write something for myself, I say, okay, this is the frame where I'm going to be. And then in there, I can be as creative as I want to be. So I'm thinking the script itself, which I never write. I never wrote, it could be a different kind of challenge. And I think writers are people that do like challenges.
Yeah. Well, some do, some don't. Some are, stick very close to,
What
their
they know.
genre, and they, they will not put one big toe outside of, their little world,
Yeah.
Whereas I'm just ready, where's my spacesuit? I'm going to take off, I'll
Right.
do
No,
anything.
it looks like it from
Yeah.
from your bio and all the things that you have done. One thing I would like to talk before the time runs out is the fact that the importance of reading. I mean, you say you read 2 to 6 books every week. I know there is a note in your website, or maybe it was in your bio, about you've been encouraged to read a lot as a kid, even the cereal boxes.
Yeah.
Like, as long as you read. Tell me about that. I think if somebody comes to you, I know they do, because you consult on this, and they say, I want to be a better writer. How does reading more frames the development of a good writer?
To me, it's very important, turn the TV off and
Start.
sit down with a book. People who want to write, or they're just learning how to write, they will get so much out of, reading, and reading on a steady basis, not just, one book a month, because you're going to learn language skills. You're going to see how other authors create their whole setup, and how things go, throughout the whole process. And, no two writers are alike. So every book that you read is going to be so totally different in, character setups and, the plot and everything else. And one thing I love about ebooks is that if you don't know that word, you just highlight it, and there's the definition. Whereas in the old days, all you had was a paperback and a dictionary.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have to take the time to, get the dictionary out and look up the word, it's taken you so far out of the story that it's kind of worthless, So, yay, team for technology.
I know. I do a lot of audiobook, and sometimes I also, being English my second language, I'm still learning, obviously, and sometimes there is a word that I think is important. I don't need to know every single word. I can, you kind of grasp it, even especially when you listen to it. But then I do the same thing. I'm walking the dogs. I just push the little button on my headset, and I say, "Hey Siri, what's that? What's that word?" So I love how you just, you learn a lot by doing that. And tell me your perspective on reading something that you don't like. I mean, follow me here. So sometimes I listen to a podcast, let's say, and I say, I don't like this style. This is something I wouldn't do.
Mm-hmm.
It's still a learning process, because
Yes.
by comparison, I can hear something that I love and that I get inspired, and I'm like, okay, that's something I want to get better, kind of like this. I don't know, an NPR, maybe nice podcast, or a BBC or whatever. And others, they're like, yeah, no, that's not good. But I still listen, maybe, because it kind of make me process the other way around how to get better, even by listening. So do you do the same thing? Do you read book that you just keep going and pulling through? Great, I got disconnected with the video.
Where are you? I can hear you, but I can't.
I'll figure it out. You can go ahead and answer the question.
So, yeah, it's I come across things that I don't like, and my writer friends laugh at me because I force myself to read it to the end, because I want to find out, if the author, could pull the rabbit out of their hat, to save their story, or what, sometimes it works, and sometimes it's just it's just trash, but I will get through it. That's all there is to it. I will get through the damn thing and, but I thoroughly believe in leaving a review that the book deserves. Okay, so if I read something that has errors all over the place, or if the plot is just so loose you can't even figure out what the heck is going on, then I'm going to, leave a public review, and I'm going to say this book needed an editor, or, a proofreader, or needed research, or something like that. Because, when you look at reviews and you've read the book and it's trash, and the book has all these 5-star reviews, well, that's family and friends that are just, they're not doing that person any favors whatsoever. Because I tell people who read my book, if you find any bloopers, let me know, because I want to fix those. And all it takes is just a click to upload a new text version.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that the crowdsourcing of information and review, as it happened on Amazon for a product, it should be something that is real. I mean,
yes.
So we need to be honest, and maybe that's something that you said it may be very useful for the writer itself to get better at something.
Yeah, they have to be able to look at those reviews and see, if they have shortcomings and if they need to improve something, instead of somebody, saying, "Oh, it was just so wonderful." I mean, that does no one any good.
Yeah, I agree. Now let's take the last few minutes, and for the people watching, I had to change my camera because this one didn't work. But for the people listening, voice is still the same. I would like to take this 5 minutes that we have left or less for you to give maybe some advice to someone that it's either a young writer or somebody that is a new writer, maybe somebody that start later in life and decide, hey, I want to really write that book. Has been in my head for a long time, even if I not an experienced one. Maybe it doesn't come from being a copywriter or a journalist or technical writer, and it's still like learning the role, but it has this desire to write. So what are maybe a couple of bullet points advice that you can give?
Well, I always tell people who want to write and they don't know how to write, or they don't know where to begin, you go back to like the 8th grade in school. You start with an outline. Just jot things down that you want to have in your book, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. It doesn't make any difference what it is. But if you start with an outline and then you expand that outline, anytime you come up with any kind of thought, just put it in there. And before you know it, you're going to have, you may start off with just a couple of paragraphs, but if you keep doing that, you're going to have, 5 pages, 10 pages, whatever. And then you have something to build a story on. And another thing that I want to put out there to people that are just starting out, try to find a critique group. You can find one through the library or a local college, or any type of school. They usually have bulletin boards or something, and you just try to find something, or you create your own critique group and hope that you get somebody in your group that's a good editor. Because I had a group that lasted for 24 years, and I finally retired it. But we had 2 great editors in that group. And so we all got together every week, well, sometimes once a month, 2 or 3 times a month. We would bring pages with us. And then later on, we would email like 20 pages to each of the members. And so they had to read all those pages, mark them up, and bring them to the next group meeting. and we would go around the table and discuss, here's what I found, I didn't like this, or, oh, I just love that, you've got all these errors, you have to learn how to spell check, kiddo, that's one of my pet peeves. This is the finger that does the spell check. Click it,
Well, I remember at the beginning of the conversation, you mentioned a lot of red pens when you started technical writing. So I got that when you said that. And I have a red pen in my hand, but it's actually a blue pen. It's red only in the color. And I don't know if you agree, but I think a lot of people, yes, think about it, learn. I love the idea of the critique group because, you can't really be a critique of yourself.
No,
it's hard. It's hard. But also maybe give it a go, give it a try. Yeah. I think a lot of people, they have it in them to be really good writer, but they're afraid of failure. And I feel like there is always someone that is not going to like it.
Oh, yeah.
There may be a lot of people that do. We don't like everything at the same
time.
And
I know that people can't see this, but they can hear this. I wrote this tiny little book, very, very tiny, called Writer's Preparation Handbook. And it doesn't make any difference if you're writing fiction or nonfiction, manuals or whatever. This will teach you how to get yourself so completely organized that you won't lose things. Because believe me, if you do not have what's important to you in a file folder, whether it's in your desk drawer or on your laptop or your desktop screen or something. When I was a technical writer, I gave a lot of lessons to the engineers because a lot of times they would end up working with the wrong version of the document. Lots of wasted time to hunt around to find the right version. And, that's why people really need to get themselves organized. So this is a tiny little book, very inexpensive, just get it.
Cool. So I think a lot of people got a lot out of this conversation, even because they'll try to write, they want it already to write, but also a lot of people that love to listen. Topics related to writing are usually people that like to read the book. I know that a lot of the audience is people interested in learning things about authors and what inspired them to write books, and maybe it helps to appreciate the books that they're reading and that they will read. So Don, I want to thank you for being on the show. I will share all the links in the notes for the podcast so that people can get in touch with you, where your books are. I know you have a website, so that's probably going to be the easiest thing, to just send people to the website. I want to thank you for your time. I really enjoyed this conversation. I learned a lot, and I'm hopeful that people in the audience are learning a lot as they go and listen to these episodes, and this in particular video. So thank you.
Well, I enjoyed it, Marco, and I really appreciate the chance to, get some information out there.
Yeah, we need to learn things so that we can actually appreciate it. I remember a lot of people, writers or musicians or artists in general, and I think Picasso actually said this: if you want to break the rules, you need to learn the rules first.
That's right.
That's right. Then you can break them. You can't just not having the knowledge of the art that you choose. And with that,
well, and if you have any questions, feel free to just contact me. And the same thing with anybody who listens or watches this. I am open to questions and answers.
That's a wonderful thing, and I hope people would take this invitation and act on it. And for everybody listening, please share this conversation, subscribe, listen to many other ones where we talk with storytellers about storytelling and their life, their experience, and the job that they do. Take care, everybody.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.